Next up, let's look at Space Weasel by Quint S. Smith. What we have is a... Oh, what the heck was it? A... Hailfire. That's the word. That used to have the big carousel and the big magazines underneath that rotated around. But what he did was take a magwell and the area right behind from a long strike and just dropped it up in there, and it just works. I mean, you can't, if you don't know what you're looking at, you wouldn't guess that that anything is amiss. But the lines just work there, and just you're dealing with a long straight rail and the top of the blaster of the long strike matching up really well with the rather long open area from the inside the Hailfire. But it just works. I would assume that this is the stock trigger linkage, and I hope so, because if you've ever used a Hailfire trigger, it's about the smoothest thing on the planet, and a real comfy grip too. And so taking the utility, I guess, or the ergonomics of the Hailfire, and then making it more of a conventional single mag platform, and doing it so well. There again, noteworthy, very noteworthy. Tied this into a Firefly stock, for comfort or whatever. But here, I guess here you can kind of see what I was talking about. The Firefly has a little bit more broader, gentler curves on stuff as opposed to some of the sharper angles here. But he manages to make it work, and that's like I said, it's just very, very noteworthy. This isn't again a combination that is very typical, or not something I would have even considered. But seeing this, I'd say, wow, if I come across a Hailfire that I have nothing else to do with, I might try something like this, just because it does work. It looks good. Okay, next up, let's look at Clifford by Sprun24. They're again using a full Centurion shell. Most people, when they integrate a strife or whatever, cut it off, ahead of the flywheels a ways, usually right here where the jam door starts. But seeing he used the whole thing in order to get a little more material to work with to integrate a Titan that's powered by the pump right here. But some of the notable parts of it, he cut out the Centurion grip, to add the strife grip to fit it in there, but then used it as the firing trigger for the Titan, which also acts as kind of a front of the magwell kind of guide thing, also kind of a grip. Like if the mag was in there, you could kind of actually grip the magwell in that area, and still, I don't know, it's an unusual combination, but there again manages to make it work. Added a little bit of a long shot, looks like, to get the shell stretched a little bit to make it fit more with the Titan and stuff. But yeah, it's just, I saw this and I was like, what the heck is going on here? Because Titan, being upside down, you don't really notice the lines as much. I sure hope he's like a lefty, or that this thing cranks up, far enough that you can actually read the gauge, because that would be really, really cool. Yeah, I don't know, it's just, I think this is the first time I'd seen a whole Centurion shell used in the integration that wasn't like the whole barrel and trying to be a Centurion. But yeah, this makes me want to use utilize the whole shell of the Centurion, being able to use some of those more characteristic lines and that extra barrel, and being able to underbarrel something like that. Well, no, clever use of reusing the Centurion grip, which probably otherwise would have been thrown away or something. But yeah, then using that as the firing trigger for the Titan. Very clever, very clever. I like that. Okay, Blue Steel by IQ13, LQ13. It's kind of funny. Like, it seems like a small blaster and relatively simple, but it's so much more than just the sum of its parts. I mean, it's obviously a strife at the base with an underbarreled Baron, but then using instead of using a conventional, like a Retaliator barrel or something like that, uses a Raider or Rampage barrel. But instead of just using the existing muzzle and stuff, decided to put a what's that, like a Rangemaster or something? I think that's something Buzzbeat. barrel in there, and so you get a little more, I guess, a bigger barrel, more girth, or whatever you want to say, through here, which kind of changes the look of the Raider barrel. But then extending it out a little further, not having that blunt end like what you get from a Raider or Rampage. But then put a Maverick slide back up in here. I don't know if that is a sight or what, but it kind of helps disguise. Because I think if the grip wasn't, or the slide wasn't there, you'd be able to pick out, okay, that's a strife and whatever. But by changing up the lines a little bit, adding a raised rail, it just kind of gives it a little bit more personality and a little more of a individual identity that would separate it from, other strife integrations. But this one really stood out to me. This is probably one of my favorites in this class. And in fact, there's a lot of good ones in this class. But it just really stood out to me. It's very compact. I mean, there's just enough barrel to attach a Baron, which I really like. I just really like the underbarreled Baron idea. But yeah, there's not a whole lot of crazy things going on. It's just like, okay, it's a Strife and a Baron with a Rampage or Raider barrel or whatever, but it just, I guess maybe because it's so unusual, but it's relatively, I don't know, it's just something about it just really speaks to me. But there again, it keeps it clean. You're not adding a lot of unnecessary clutter. Here, we've talked about keeping rails in line. You have one rail that's rather low mounted here on the barrel, and another one that's, noticeably higher. More akin to like the Modulus or whatever that has the base blaster that has the handle with the rail up on top. I think having a change of elevation that much works. And there again, not knowing what's going on inside this, if this is just a box or if he's got something cool going on inside, it's hard to tell. But it just, that works to me visually, having an elevated rail that much. Whereas if he just left the rail down here, it would have been a little weird having a rail like a 1/4 of an inch difference here. And so there again, that's stuff you can look for as far as, are the rails, really close together height-wise? Maybe add some kind of extension, and if that's your thing. And there again, adding, I guess, somewhat of an iron sight kind of look up here. I don't know. No, it's just like I said, it's so much more than just the sum of its parts. It's more than just a Strife and a Baron and a barrel and a thing. It just, like at a glance, it just looks good. It doesn't look like an integration. And again, like I said, I'll keep harping on that, but that's kind of what you're going for, but it just does it so well. So I'll stop gushing about that, and I think we're done with the Triumvirate, and we'll go on to the Myriad class, which I think using like 4 or more blasters, I think. There wasn't very many entries. In the other entries, I didn't really have a whole lot to say about. But this here, it's obviously a Hyperfire at the base with a Demolisher missile launcher thing underneath that kind of ties into, like, the main body of the missile launcher kind of ties in with the little grip on the Hyperfire, which I think is cool. Having that being kind of a line there again ties the two together. Back here, he added a kind of the body of a proton. Like, this is where the coil of the spring on the little throwing arm inside the proton would be. This is kind of like the main belly of the beast, so to speak. And I think he said he housed a voltmeter or some kind of thing in there. But that's cool. There again, using up that kind of weird space that's there on the back of the Hyperfire. But it doesn't look necessarily like something was added unless you know what was added. And then up here, probably one of my favorite parts is not using a long strike barrel as we know using long strike barrels, but using the whole body pretty much of the long strike as a barrel. And until I saw that, I didn't realize, wow, just how skinny and long the body itself of the long strike is, that you can actually use it for an integrated barrel on another base blaster. And here, you pull the lines back up into here, and there's a bit of a shell overlap. Still using the details and stuff back here in the Hyperfire, but then I don't know what lines he followed. It almost looks like he added something else here. I'm not sure, but it helps carry that line up into here and kind of I don't know. It just helps blend, there again, the shell, one shell into the other. If you'd left the line solid here, then it would have been very evident that there was a shell and then a seam of some kind. But doing whatever happened here, that I honestly don't know, but something happens here that helps blend the long strike body into the Hyperfire body up in here. There again, it looks like you blended the top lines of the rails, but it helps make an integration look less like an integration and just like a blaster. Like if I didn't know what these components were, I'd just be like, oh, that's cool, a fancy painted blaster. But, you know, when you can identify this part, this part, this part, this part, you can really appreciate how well that's blended together. And that's, I guess, one thing I've noticed for the Hyperfire is that it benefits a lot from having the barrel extended. I've seen several barrels extended on the Hyperfire that really helps the lines really, I guess, stretching out the body makes everything else look better. So, yeah, Asmodeus. I'm going to apologize in advance, by Alexander. And moving on to the final class, the Emerged Elite, which is kind of the offshoot of sorts, to where guys who have a lot more experience with integrations and people who've already won contests can enter and have all theirs kind of compete against each other instead of competing against more beginners and stuff like that. So right out of the gate, we have the ASG-18 by Mr. Heathpants, which at first glance you'd say, well, that's not really an integration. Oh, huh. This is a Sledgefire stock that's just an extension off of the X-Zeus stock that houses a couple extra shells. And then, of course, what is that? I think that's the actual little barrel muzzle piece on a Hyperfire. But what looks like an X-Zeus body is actually a magazine-fed pump-action shotgun fed by Sledgefire shells. And that's really all that needs to be said. There again, adding the extension onto the stock, at first glance, doesn't really look like an extension. It just looks okay, and that there again is what you're going for, and is indication of a good integration. The barrels themselves, can't say a whole lot about because they're tubes, but the overall picture, I mean, of course, is what we're looking at. Looks good. I mean, having the extended barrel on the X-Zeus body looks good, and then balancing it out with the extended stock, which a lot of people have complained about having too short of a stock from the factory. There again, you're getting not only the extension, so it's more comfortable, but also being able to house a few more shells. So yeah, definitely a unique blaster, but a beautiful one by Mr. Heathpants. Next up is Ace of Skulls by Nevitz01, and don't really have a whole lot to say, except for it's a rocket shotgun, and that's pretty darn cool. With that, what do you say to that? Except for cool, and boy, if he can figure out a way to make that semi-automatic rocket launcher, I would definitely be interested, because I would totally play with a semi-automatic magazine or cylinder shotgun or cylinder rocket launcher thing. Very unusual and very insane work by Nevitz, but he never fails to impress. Weird stuff, but man, good ideas. Next up is the 44 by Frisco Bandito, and this I really like. It's a Magnum Super Drum Dart Zone blaster with a long strike stock on the back that just blends in really well. That really had to take some close looking to see exactly how that was blended together, but it just looks good. It just works. And having this little area here where the, I guess, a cheek rest kind of thing is on the long strike, still allows room for the priming slide of the Super Drum or the Magnum back in here. So that's kind of an added benefit there. And up here, I think that's one of those Super Soakers again. But basically, it is basically a body to house or to hold a Wizard, I believe, the Busby Wizard little 4-barreled pistol thing that's kind of underbarreled in there, and it has an XBZ tank, which is pumped by, I believe the pump is up in here, from a Havoc fire. What the heck is it? They're again another Dart Zone blaster, I believe, Adventure Force, I think. But the lines on here just work. I mean, even the pistol or the pump thing aside, if you're just looking at the lines of the blaster itself, it's just long and lean. I mean, having the way the Wizard blends into the bottom of the Super Soaker barrel area, it just looks nice. I mean, it's the same bulk, I guess. I don't know what it is, but it just works so good, and this is just such a clean integration. And having I guess having a kind of a long feeling grip, having swept back grip on the extended long strike stock and everything, balances out really well with having the longer. I mean, the Magnum already had kind of a long barrel, but for whatever reason, this barrel just looks a little more sleek, I guess. But no, I really like just the integration work, especially here on the barrel. It's just very tastefully done. And we're going to end with Scourge by Exiled, which, Landy, where do you start? Holy cow. It's a Demolisher bullpup, has, was that a Praxis stock, Ravonics grip, Demolisher missile launcher grip up here, Thunderblast missile launcher. These two pieces here are off the Super Soakers. This part up here, I think, is off of a Thunderbow. Miscellaneous little bits and bobs everywhere, but it doesn't look like it. It has just these nice long lines. Honestly, I don't know how the guy does it, but it's just it's I don't know. It's just so well implemented. It doesn't look like a bunch of pieces stuck together. It obviously looks like a radical, alien gun of some kind, some kind of sci-fi thing. But just the, I don't know. I guess it's bulky, but it's like sleek bulky, and where you don't necessarily want a, I don't know. I just run out of words with stuff like this. It's just so well done, and even the quality of the integration itself aside, the lines are just good. I mean, you've got the obvious kind of muzzle area here with rocket launcher tucked up real tight underneath. I mean, it doesn't look like a blaster with a rocket launcher stuck underneath. It's kind of like a blaster wrapped over a rocket launcher, so it really helps keep it nice and tidy. And I don't know, it doesn't look so much like here's a firing mode and here's a firing mode, so to speak. It's just a very, very cohesive unit. So much weird stuff going on, but yet so, I guess, compact, and just things are just tucked in real well. The Praxis stock fits, inside of the back of the Demolisher, and can't remember what these pieces are, but it's not stuck to the back. It's tucked in, and you have where the shell, like I said, wraps around the outside. Just pieces wrap over each other, which really helps tie lines together. Blends the shells together a lot better, instead of having like a seam where one piece butts up to the other one. You have, like I said, this wraps around here, this kind of overlaps this overlaps this. Just really helps create a lot more like a bunch of blaster chunks giving each other hugs or something. But no, just amazing work by Scourge, Exiled on his Scourge blaster, featuring onboard compressor, which is pretty cool. But I don't know. Hopefully I've touched on some ideas, or at least pointed some things out with these, just kind of this little discussion we've had. Hopefully somebody can find something useful. I want to continue this with more, I guess, free-range blasters, not necessarily competition stuff, but just when I see something, because a lot of times I look and I say, wow, what a good idea, what a cool idea someone had, to integrate whatever into, something else, and wow, I wouldn't have thought of that, and I wanted to discuss more styling, and what pieces to use, not necessarily the mechanical integration of how to physically put this on this, but just things to look for. Because you do see some integrations where it's like, okay, well, that's a cool idea, but this doesn't look right. I want to cover more on style-wise what looks good and why and stuff like that, and hopefully this gave you kind of a taste of how my brain reads other people's work. And please let me know what you think in the comments below. Is this something that would you watch more episodes like this talking about other people's stuff and what I like about it, I guess, or what I feel makes these blasters look as good as they do, and just things like that. So yeah, let me know if you're like, what, we don't really care, you just do your own thing and we'll watch or whatever. That's cool too. But I wanted to at least I don't know, I guess give this a shot and see what you guys thought. So yeah, if you guys like it, I'll try to make more in the future, and if you don't, well, then we'll go on and do something else instead. So with that, I guess wishing blue skies and green lights to you and yours, and may all your troubles be teeny weeny ones.